Hi everyone, I hope you're all keeping well. The video that I done on the royals was actually quite well received, and there were a couple of questions on that I wanted to answer myself, but when they came up in the comments I thought rather than send the replies on there I'd just do a short video and answer some of them. So what I'm going to do in this video is a little bit of more information on the puppet master and just a little bit more information on Andrew and Sarah Ferguson going forward. Before I start, I do have to say that this is for entertainment purposes only, my thoughts and opinions, it's not fact. Now, I'm going to get into the reading on the puppet master that I've been calling him first. Now, I know when you hear that, it sounds like quite a sinister character, doesn't it? It sounds like, you know, there's someone sat there with all these dodgy goings on, trying to control everything that's going on around them. That's not what I get from this gentleman. So a little bit of background on him. This man has the kind of power, the kind of wealth and the kind of influence that can only come from a family that's been in power for generations. So it's like a very, I'm going to say an old money family. It's like almost some kind of aristocracy. Around him, I feel like he's kept his circles very close. You know, it's he's got some people who he trusts, and everyone else is just an acquaintance that's basically a guest in and out of his life. He's also the type of person that keeps friends close, enemies closer. Because of this generational, it's like almost some sort of aristocracy that I feel around him. He mixes with a lot of people. Now, he doesn't actually really, I'm going to say he doesn't care too much for these people. There are things that he sees with people who have that much money and power, and what they get up to, and this man's horrified by this. I know I've mentioned, you know, he's getting Andrew death by 1,000 cuts and it's quite personal. He's not just, you know, exposing Andrew. In the past, this man has exposed other people too. I feel like there have been people in positions of power within, you know, high-ranking city firms. There's been people who he's managed to, how can I say this, to push out of positions of power. He doesn't believe they should be there. And it's all to do with behaviours. It's like this man has a real, and I mean most normal people do, this man has a real hatred for people who take younger people, who take children, and offences that are very abusive in nature. I mean, he does have quite good morals, this man. He lives his life a certain way and he thinks other people should too. And when he sees people, you know, from his, I'm going to say his walk of life, you know, the higher echelons of society, when he sees them actually getting away with these crimes and, you know, walking around like nothing's happened, there's no repercussions for them, it really does boil his blood. One other thing about this man, because he keeps his circle so close and because he doesn't have a lot of people in it and he's very private, it's like the people around him have no idea, they don't even suspect it's him that's actually exposing them for what they are. So as I said, I feel like there's been a couple of the others that he's done in the past. With his industry, if you like, and what he's involved with, this is why I keep coming back to the powerful family connection. So this man around him, I don't get any strong connection to, you know, a specific industry, but I feel like he's on the periphery of pretty much everything. I get a really strong US connection. So I keep on seeing, you know, Washington, New York, and he's been exposing people in those two cities for quite a long time. I'm also getting that he's exposed a couple of people in sort of LA and California, but it's a bit like he doesn't have that much of a foothold there. I think he's got people working against what he would like to do in those areas, but Washington and New York, I have this very strong connection with this man. So back to his industries. like I said, I feel like he's on the periphery of everything. So entertainment business, like literally all of it. So we have newspapers, we've got, you know, online, as well as he's quite old school as well. He's probably a similar age to Andrew, so he's not like a young person, but it's got, you know, all kinds coming out here. So he was connected to them when they were print as well, and his family was, you know, he's connected to the podcasters, like the type of person that if someone said his name, they would have heard of him, but he's not someone they would know to bump into in the street. He's not someone who people in the entertainment industry would know and pick up the phone to. Like I said, he's very, very closed door, very, very guarded about what goes on. The only real connection that I'm getting around him is historically, and I mean sort of historically, when his family was first becoming quite prominent and becoming wealthy and coming into power, it's almost like they had a lot to do with military and defence, whether that was some sort of weapon system or that was defence contracts. There's this really strong military link around his family. Coming back to Andrew then. So around Andrew, this man has a really, really personal vendetta. And one of the things that I keep getting is this connection to a female, and the female's got dark hair. Now, I feel from my reading that Andrew, he propositioned this female. There's a connection here to, you know, debauchery, to something suggested of quite a sexual nature, and also all this cash. Now, this woman was incredibly upset by this. She was really, really hurt, and I don't feel as though this woman was, you know, dating this guy. I don't feel as though she was working for him either. I feel as though she's from quite a good family, not aristocracy, but someone who was from a good family, had a decent upbringing, and quite embarrassed and humiliated, but it left her in tears, this interaction. She was really, really upset. And this man, he knows her through some sort of, there's a family connection, sort of his family knows her family. She's moved on now, this lady. She's married, she's happily married. Again, she's in quite a wealthy family, but this, seeing her so upset, did have an effect on this man. And I feel like it's been quite a lot of years that he's, you know, had it in for Andrew in a way. I think he finds him, I feel like he finds him quite arrogant, self-centered, and he feels that if something had been done several years ago, if there'd been some sort of repercussions for the actions of Andrew and the other people, then perhaps it wouldn't have got as bad as it is today. I mean, there would have still been people that would be involved in that, and it's quite an idealistic way of looking at things, but that's this man's beliefs. And I said earlier that he'd already exposed quite a few people. I do feel like he was responsible for some of the exposure that came from a prominent woman in the TV industry. I think it could be Ellen DeGeneres. I feel like this man for whatever reason, didn't like her attitude, and he helped get those stories out there somehow about her. But I also get there's a couple of political figures. And when I come to politics with this man, again, I keep thinking Republican, Democrat, so that strong US link plays out again there. But I just don't feel as though he's massively strongly, I mean, he votes, and he'll vote for whoever he does, but I don't feel like he's massively aligned with any party, in as though he's completely die hard, as though this party can do nothing wrong. He's just not that kind of gentleman. I feel like he would switch his alliances as well if he thought he was doing the right thing. But again, I feel like there's two political figures that he's been responsible for their downfall. And when a lot of I feel like this is Bill Clinton actually, but when a lot of stories were coming around regarding a female and connected to the White House, I actually feel like he was helping to push a lot of that, or he was like, you know, somewhat responsible for making sure that some of that information got out there so that people could make up their own minds going forward. So yeah, I don't feel as though he's, you know, he deserves a sinister name or a sinister reputation. It's like he's targeting and trying to expose the people who he feels are completely abhorrent, but that he knows, like standard law enforcement and, you know, standard journalists, they just wouldn't have a chance of getting anything together on these people without someone in that kind of class, I'm going to say, actually helping them out. And I feel as though that's what he's doing here. So I'm going to move on to Andrew now, but before I do, I'm going to say that this man, this puppet master, there's another story coming out, like another expose, if you like, and this man has been pushing, you know, to get this out there, to expose these people behind the scenes. And what I feel from my reading is this is two men. They're younger. I mean, they're not young, but they're, you know, not past sort of 50. So I'm feeling like younger generation than Andrew. But there's these two men between the age of 30 to 50, I'm going to say, and they're part of a couple. They're in a partnership. And something's going to be exposed on them, and it's to do with fraud, but it's also to do with some sort of abuse. I think it sets off, the first thing that gets revealed is something to do with restraints. It could be sort of a fetish thing originally, but a lot of things then get exposed, and it's, you know, it's a build up. Things pile up onto these two males, and then the full story starts to come out around them. So going on to Andrew. Now, around him, I genuinely feel that he should know who this male is that's exposing him, but he just doesn't have any self-awareness, I don't feel. And again, I think I said in my last reading, he's quite sort of delusional, so he just wouldn't expect anyone to be pushing stories or narrative on him. He's quite childlike, I'm going to say, in his thought process, whereas, oh well, if they're not getting any money from it, then why would they do it? He doesn't actually feel that people would do things like this because they think it's the right thing to do. He feels that you can sort of bat it away and just blame people for being after money rather than after some sort of justice. So again, yeah, quite delusional, not very self-aware, and it's like he's trying to lay low for a little bit now, but going forward, there's this holiday that I see him going on, and I feel like this holiday is going to be quite relevant because it's like there's an image of him on a yacht and he's somewhere abroad. He feels sort of close to the Middle East, but he goes away on this holiday. Then there's more stories to come out around Andrew, and they're going to be drip fed through 2026. I've already mentioned one of them, and that's going to be to do with a young blonde female who was working for an organisation, and I'm going to say handy Andy with this one because that's what I keep feeling around it, like he's touched her inappropriately, you know, some sort of groping. The other one that I mentioned was sort of felt like a blood diamond kind of story, like, you know, he'd been asking people to invest in something, and there's a possibility actually that someone died trying to set up this company or do something for this company, but it's a really exploitative firm, really treating workers horrendously. So that's another one. But I'm also getting something coming out around Andrew, and it's not a scandal as such. So like I said, I feel like he's quite he doesn't have any self-awareness as to what's going on. But I get a health issue for Andrew, and this health issue is actually planned. So it's something that he does to himself. It could actually be an attempt at, I'm getting self-harm a lot, so I feel like it's some sort of attempt at suicide, if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. But it's some sort of attempt to harm himself. I feel like substances quite strong around this one, so possibly some sort of pills or whatever. But again, this is planned, it's something he does to himself. And it's almost like when these stories are coming out, it feels like it gets too much for him, but the cynical part of me feels like this is planned to try and get some sort of public sympathy. It's something that the royal family try and keep private. They don't want, you know, it to be out there. They don't want things getting in the news. And he is actually okay. I can see him in some sort of hospital bed. But the really strange thing about this one is that I keep seeing a plane around this. And, you know, if there's some sort of disaster, there's some sort of incident around him and it's on a plane, then it's obvious that he's not going to end up in any kind of recovery, I wouldn't have thought. But there's some sort of plane here as well, so it could be whilst he's on holiday or whilst he's travelling. But I keep getting this health issue is actually self-inflicted, and it's something that Andrew does to himself. As I mentioned about Sarah Ferguson as well, there's something coming for her. I said about like she was going to be looking towards doing these interviews, one on her health and another one about how she was under lock and key. She had to do certain things. There were silly things that she'd done for love, but I don't feel that she's going to turn on Andrew or target him in any way. I don't feel she'll move in with him initially into wherever it is. I think it's Norfolk, wasn't it, where he's gone? But I don't feel she'll move in initially, but she eventually will move back in with him, because with these two, it's like they have this relationship. And you know how this is what I feel about their relationship. So apologies, don't know what happened there, but back to Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. Now, I've done a reading a couple of times on their relationship, and I always get a similar or the same vein. I don't know if anyone else gets this around them, but I always felt when they met, they were younger, that was absolute genuine spark between the two of them. There was like fireworks, and I don't ever feel like that really went away from them. I feel like now in modern times there are certain relationships that are quite open, quite liberal, and as long as no one's getting hurt, I feel as though everyone's quite accepting of that, aren't they? Because how people live their lives is down to them, and like I said, if no one's getting hurt, then no one else has any right to judge over people. But at the time, and obviously because of who they were, that was a very, very, you know, that just would not have been allowed to happen. That was not a thing. And I always feel that, you know, when Sarah Ferguson was caught with someone sucking her toes, you know, it was this final straw, and it's almost like they were punished for, you know, the type of relationships they wanted to have, and the punishment was they had to get divorced. And the reading, it's like as though the thought process behind that would keep them apart, and it didn't. I feel like on paper they may have divorced, but I don't feel like, you know, emotionally that they ever did, because like I said, sort of the sparks flew when they first met, and that's those two, that's them connected. And obviously, you know, what they've done now, some of the things they've done, there's just no excuse for. But I do feel like their relationship was they were basically persecuted for who they were in that relationship a lot of years ago. But again, I don't feel like they've ever really separated. And with Sarah Ferguson, I don't feel as though she's going to move in with Andrew straight away, but she will eventually end up back there, because the two of them, for whatever reason, they cannot seem to separate from one another. They will end up back together. And like I said, I don't feel as though, yes, they're divorced on paper, but I don't feel as though they ever really separated as people. With Sarah Ferguson, I do feel like next year she's going to have some success. Like I said, I feel like she's going to have the interviews. I feel like books as well. I don't think her book sales are going to go down or anything like that. She's, lost these charity positions, but I don't feel as though she's going to lose everything financially. There's still going to be these lifelines there for her that she's going to tug on, and I do feel she's already got things in the pipeline to get herself more money coming in, even if she's not in the limelight as much. I think in years to come, especially if what this reading's saying is right, in the years to come there will be more stories and she will eventually step back into the limelight, but it's not going to be under the royal family banner, if you like. When the new accusations come out about Andrew and when there's new things revealed, I feel as though there's going to be something, and it's like this link to blood or DNA. Something's going to come out around that, and I feel as though Sarah Ferguson is going to stand by him again through all of it. Maybe not publicly, but behind closed doors, she's going to be that constant in Andrew's life. And when things happen, when he has this health crisis that's self-inflicted, I feel as though she's going to be the person that's literally sat beside him as well. Another question that came up that is one that a lot of people are asking, and is this the end of the royal family? And I go in and out of this one because it is in a way, because it's the end of the royal family in its current format. I feel like when William steps up, when William is king, that is when the royal family will change completely. And I do feel as though he's going to have quite a few shocks in store for several people. It'll cause a lot of ruffled feathers, but I feel as though he will actually slim the monarchy down, and it'll only be, those in the direct line of succession. I feel as though a lot of the wider family is going to be cut off once William becomes king. So yeah, in a sense, this is the end of the royal family as we know it. It will change going forward. I hope that did answer some of the questions that people had regarding the royals, but I think there's such a complicated family. We do forget that, obviously there's the extremes, like sort of the Andrew scandals and things, but we sometimes forget that there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we deal with as normal people too. But I will try and do another reading on them in the future. I do keep getting something quite major coming for the royal family though before Christmas, some sort of major news story that's coming out, but I'll try and do a reading on that in the next week or so. Thank you.